Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by, and thank you for joining Camp Bow Wow's Dog Food webinar. During the presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. And if you would like to ask a question during the presentation, please use the chat feature located in the lower left corner of your screen. As a reminder, this call is being recorded Thursday, September 25th, 2014. Choosing the right food and having proper feeding habits for your pet is a critical component of responsible dog care. Camp Bow Wow Dog behavior expert Laura Roach, CPDT-KA, is here to provide tips on what to look for in food, how food affects your dog's health and behavior, and more. She is ready to answer any questions you have on the best feeding practices for your pup. It is now my pleasure to turn the conference over to Laura Roach. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to our Bon Appetit Dog Food and Health webinar. So just a quick note about myself is my name is Laura, and I'm a CPDT-KA, and I run the Behavior Buddies Dog Training and Behavior Program at Camp Bow Wow. I am the lead instructor of the Behavior Buddies Trainer Certification Program, and I have been helping humans train their dogs for over 8 years. I am the proud owner of 2 Dobermans, a Rottweiler Doberman mix, and 3 wonderful kitty cats. So as a reminder, what we're going to do is we're going to use the chat feature, and then anytime during the presentation you can go ahead and chat your question to us. So while you're thinking about it, go ahead and get it in there. And then at the end of our presentation, we're going to go ahead and answer as many as possible. And then if we run out of time, we will let you know how to get a hold of us. So we wanted to start off with just a little disclaimer. And the disclaimer is that we're not going to be discussing brands, but rather providing you guys with some information to help you make more informed decisions for your dog and for their health. We feel food is a very personal choice, and you guys have to decide what is right for you, and what works for one dog may not work for another dog. If you have food that is recommended by your veterinarian, do not make any changes without speaking to them. You know, your vet is there for the health of your dog as well, but a lot of people don't have a lot of education about food, so we just want to give you, point you in the right direction. So like I said, it's just general information, and you need to choose what's best for your dog and for your lifestyle. If you do decide to change your food, you may want to consult your veterinarian, and this information is specific to dog food. So cat food is different than dog food, so just want to make sure you guys know that it's different. So what we're going to talk about is just some basic information. We're going to talk about picking the right dog food. We're going to talk about what ingredients do you want to look for, what ingredients do you maybe want to try and avoid, how often to feed and how much to feed your dog, how food affects your dog's health and behavior, how to make the switch, and then raising the next generation of responsible pet parents. So let's start off with just some general information. So we all know as humans that there are some foods that are good for us, and there's some foods that aren't good for us. And we always try and strive to make good nutritional choices because we know that it affects our bodies in many ways. And what's happening over time is that people are realizing this is the same for their dogs as well. And people are choosing higher and higher quality foods because they're understanding the choices they make affect their dogs in the same way that our food affects us. So the food that our dogs consume, it goes to their health, to their weight. We're going to talk about how it goes and it makes changes in their behavior, and it also has changes in their potty habits, which we'll talk about that as well. So we're going to start off with how to pick the right food for your dog. So before you guys start looking for a food, you're going to want to sit down and think about the following. So think about your dog's weight. Does your dog need to gain weight, lose weight, or are you pretty happy with where they are? Think about the age. So are they a puppy? Are they adult? Are they a senior? Because foods are classified in different age groups. Activity level. So are they a high energy dog? Are they a normal energy dog? Or are they kind of like my dogs, which are couch potatoes, and I would classify as low? Think about their skin and their coat. Are they dry, flaky, itchy? Does their coat seem pretty normal to you? Are they losing fur, scratching? So think about all those things. And then potty habits. And a few things you want to think about is, number one, are they a puppy? If so, food is definitely going to affect this. Also, if you have an older dog, are they going to the bathroom too often? Or when they go to the bathroom, is it abnormal? So I think most of you guys kind of know abnormal would fit under the category of maybe it's a little bit of a softer stool. So picking the right food, the first 4 ingredients are really the bulk of what your food is made of, and that's the majority of what your dog is going to eat. So when you're looking at a label, you really want to look at those first 4 ingredients, because that is the chunk of what is going into your dog. And the next thing is you want to look for real and defined ingredients. So basically things like chicken, salmon, lamb, bison, and we mean defined as in you know what it is. So get a named ingredient as high up in the list as possible. So you don't want something like meat, because if they don't define what meat is, it's not generally a great thing. So look for those things that you absolutely know what they are: chicken, salmon, lamb, bison, etc. So the question, do you know what it is? If you know what it is, it's probably good for your dog to eat. So we all know apples are good for us. It's good for your dog. Beware of ingredients you don't know. So if it's something you have to look up, if it's something you could never spell if somebody asked you to, if it's something that's a really long word, really stop and think about those, especially if they're up there high in that ingredient list in those first 4. Does it sound good to you? If it does, it's probably good for your dog. So things like apples, carrots, rice, potatoes, oats, those are all yummy things, and they're good for your dog as well. So what should you avoid? So like I talked about it a couple seconds ago, anything that is not very well defined. So the term meat, they don't say what the specific type of meat is, then you really want to watch out for it. Byproduct is typically leftover or waste from the animals. Waste meaning whatever's left over. And then you want to also be careful of waste products. So things like corn, gluten meal, brewer's rice. A lot of people always ask me, is meal okay? So like chicken meal. Meal is basically just the term for meat that it's had the majority of its water removed. So it's not completely gone of water, but it actually is not a bad, meat meal is not a bad thing as long as it is, once again, defined. You want it to be chicken meal, lamb meal, not meat meal. So anything that's very non-specific, you want to be wary of. So let's talk real quick about protein and fat levels. So before you look at a new food, if you're thinking about switching to a different food, what I want you to do is I want you to look at the protein and fat levels that are in your current food. Because if your dog is a really good weight right now and you look at your food and you see that they're at 25% protein, you know that when you go to the store and you start making comparisons in dog food, you want to find something about that same protein level. If you go too low, your dog's going to get skinny. If you go too high, your dog's going to get overweight. So make sure you know that information before you set out to the store. Otherwise, you're really not going to have a good basis of a comparison, and you may wind up bringing home something that isn't necessarily going to be the best for your dog. So make sure you have that information when you go in. And then don't be fooled by creative branding names. So there's a lot of things. We all know advertising is awesome, but there's a lot of different ways that foods are described. I'm sure you guys know there's tons of brands now. There's all sorts of different things. It's very confusing. So there's light, L-I-G-H-T. There's light, L-I-T-E. There's weight loss, weight care, slim and healthy, healthy weight. So don't worry about that. Always go back to the protein and fat level because that is what's important in your food. So have those numbers with you and stick with that, and that's going to guide you. So for feeding schedules, there's a lot of variation between what used to be what people thought was the way to do things, and as science has come along over time, we're catching up to new and different ways. So like I said, things we're talking about today are just recommendations, but one of the things that we always say is measure your food with a true measuring cup. So don't use a food can, don't use a coffee cup or coffee mug. Make sure it's something that you can actually measure and know you are giving your dog a cup. When you're feeding your dog, the best way to feed your dog is 2 meals per day. 3 meals per day is fine as well, but we want to not get into feeding our dog once a day, and we'll talk about that in a few moments. Here's some benefits, and when you do feed your dog 2 meals per day, leave the food down for about 20 minutes, and then you're going to pick up the bowl until the next feeding. So if you're switching from free feeding your dog, which means leaving the food out all the time, to doing what I call structured feedings, which is 2 feedings a day or 3 feedings a day, it's going to take your dog a couple days to realize that that food bowl is going to go away. So they may not eat all of the first time the bowl went down, or they may not eat all the second time the bowl goes down. Once your dog starts to figure out, oh, I should probably eat it because it's here, but it's going to go away, that's when we start getting a dog that's eating on a really nice schedule. So structured feeding benefits. One of the fastest ways for us to know that our dogs are not feeling well is if they don't eat. So when you put 2 cups in that bowl in the morning and you still have about 2 cups when your dog's usually done eating, you're going to go, hey, that's a little odd for my dog. Then when you feed your dog at dinner time, if they haven't touched it again, it's time to go to the vet because you're starting to see they're not feeling well. Because if they're not going to eat, it's obviously they're not feeling well. So if you free feed, which is leaving your food out all day, it's much harder for us to notice things like that. It helps keep your dog on a structured potty schedule. So especially if you have a puppy, you want to know when they have to go to the bathroom. So you guys will know if my dogs are like clockwork. They eat, and I know exactly when they're going to have to go to the bathroom. So if you have a puppy, this is super duper important, but it's great for any dog because you'll know exactly when your dog needs to go to the bathroom. You're not going to lose track of how much your dog is actually eating. So a lot of times what will happen with free feeding is that parents will just keep dumping food into the dog's bowl and not necessarily measuring it. So they may actually be consuming more than we realize because there also might be multiple family members. One will see the bowl's empty. They'll go ahead and they'll dump food in, and the other people didn't know, and food just keeps coming. So you want to make sure you actually know how much they're eating. And then also, free feeding makes dogs very picky eaters. So if you have a dog that's on structured feedings multiple times or 2 or 3 times a day, they're going to eat when that bowl is down. If you have a dog that kind of picks, that tends to be because they're free feeding and they know the food's always there for them. So when you're determining the feeding amount for your dog, you want to know your dog's current weight or as close as possible because when you switch foods, and most of the time when people switch foods, they switch from a lower quality brand or one that doesn't have as high quality ingredients. They move to a higher quality brand. And when you do that, your dog's actually going to eat less food. So when you start with your dog's current weight, so when you switch foods, you're going to pick kind of the middle of the recommended range for their weight, and then you'll adjust from there. So let's say the recommended feeding for your dog's weight is between 2 and 3 cups. I would probably start at 2.5 cups, and if they start to get a little chunky, I know to go to the bottom of that range, and if they're losing a little bit of weight, you can go to the top of the range. But I wouldn't start, way up there. If you upgrade your dog to a higher quality food, they're going to eat less. So don't be surprised when you see the label if the recommended feeding amount is lower. So what actually can happen is people will switch dog foods and they won't realize that the dog is actually going to eat less of the better food, and they'll try and feed them the same amount, and the dog will actually wind up getting sick. So make sure that if you do decide to switch over your food, that you're looking at exactly what they're saying you should feed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 2 different dog food brands. One is a lower quality food, one is a premium food, and I'm going to show you the recommended amount to feed. And these are both, they're just general adult dog food brands. So here are 2 different labels. And it's hard because you'll see there's different overlaps. So if you look at brand 1, it's up to 10 pounds, where brand 2 is up to 15 pounds. So you're going to kind of have to gauge, but a good example is that brand 1, if you're looking at their 50 to 75 pound range, they're saying you're going to feed your dog 3.5 cups to 4.5 cups. If you look at brand 2, between 61 and 80 pounds, it's 2.5 cups to 3 cups. So significantly different. So if you had, for example, a Great Dane, I had one family in one of my training classes that they were able to cut out 4 cups a day of their food, because when they upgraded to a higher quality food, the dog's body actually used it better. And so even though the price looked a little bit more expensive up front, it actually wound up being cheaper in the long run because the dog's food did not have to be replaced as often. So nutrition and your dog's health. Just like humans, the healthier the ingredients, the healthier we are and the better we feel. So a lot of people don't realize dogs are susceptible to all the different things that humans are. Diabetes, high blood pressure, heart problems, difficulty breathing. You guys get the idea. So just make sure that when you guys are choosing what you're feeding your dog and how you're feeding, that you think about the different things that can happen. So, if you have a dog that's slightly overweight, let's get them on a food that's going to help lower their weight so we don't have to worry about things like diabetes. We all love our pups and we want them here for as much time as we can. So nutrition and your dog's behavior, and this is something that's kind of interesting because it's something that more research is being done on as time goes on. And with your dog's behavior, the food you feed actually can affect it, because so carbohydrates in food, so I'm talking about the not good carbs, not complex carbs. So complex carbs are fine. It can actually raise blood sugar levels pretty rapidly. So if you have a dog that's pretty active, some people would say wild, crazy, whatever, you're going to want to avoid certain ingredients because it can actually make it worse. So corn syrup, those are all things. The more protein that's in a food for a dog that's hyperactive, the better, because it's actually got tryptophan in the protein, which is like turkey. The turkey makes us sleepy. It's the same effect on your dog. Feeding once per day, so we talked about that. it can also cause behavioral issues. So things like excessive chewing, dogs eating objects that they should not. So it's not something a lot of people like to talk about, but there may be dogs that actually will wind up going in their backyard and cleaning it up for you because they're hungry. So think about things like that. You know, I always try and compare it to, I wouldn't want to go 24 hours without eating, and dogs have a hard time with it as well. Dogs that eat foods that are rich in antioxidants, it's actually proven that they learn better. So if you're trying to train your dog to be a good dog, it's definitely great for them. And then as dogs get older, their brain starts to decline. So they can also do things like they start excessively licking, pacing. So the more antioxidants that are in their food, the more likely they are to suffer from age-related behaviors. And before I go to the next slide, one of the things I wanted to kind of touch on is the prices of food, because it's something that I learned over time, is that when you are going to look at foods, no matter where you go, what I want you to do is I want you to look at the price per ounce of the food. So don't look at the price tag. And the reason why is because if you look at some food bags are 40 pounds. Some are 32 pounds, some are 35 pounds. So you're not really comparing apples to apples. If you look at the price per ounce on the label, just like they have at the grocery store, when you go to a pet store, if you look at the price per ounce, it's going to give you a much better indicator of where you are in your price point. So you'll be surprised. There are some foods that you're going to go, wow, I'm surprised that that food actually costs that much, when this food over here, you know, is 1 cent cheaper price per ounce and actually has better ingredients. So just think about that. Arm yourself with that as you go in, and don't just look at the big sticker price. Look at the price per ounce. And so the next thing is how to switch foods correctly. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that you want to switch your food slowly. If you do not, your dog may get digestive issues like diarrhea, upset stomach, and this can cause you to feel like the food that you've switched to is not working. So when you do it, here's how you want to do it. The first couple days, 1 to 3 days, you're going to do 25% new food mixed in with 75% old food. Then you're going to go 50-50, 75%, 100. So it's going to be a 10-day process, nice and slow, allows your dog to have their tummy adjust to it slowly so they don't get sick. And it'll make you happier, it'll make them happier, and that makes everybody happy. So don't wait until your dog's food is out if you're going to go ahead and switch their food. You want to know how much they eat and decide how much you're going to need to start that switch over. Next, we're going to talk about raising the next generation of responsible pet parents. So one of the things we're really big on is we're so excited when we have people like you guys who are out there and want to learn more about their dogs and learn how to make their lives better, because that's something we are all about with happy, healthy dogs and happy, healthy people. So you guys, a lot of you have children, so it's important. Teach your children about responsibilities that come with pet ownership. Instill proper pet care habits in your kids by having them help with things like feeding, walking, brushing, bathing. Even though you guys as adults are ultimately responsible for the health and well-being of your four-legged child, it's also important for your children to understand. So one of the things that we just did is we created a book called Scout Says Dogs Need More Than Love. And it's a book about responsible dog care, because I know when I was a child, I always said, Dad, I want a dog. Mom, I want a dog. And their response was, you have to feed it and walk it and pick up after it. Well, this is a little book. It's written by from the dog's point of view, telling a child what they would have to do if they got a dog, all the things they'd have to do to take care of it. So if you have a local Camp Bow Wow or a Home Buddies, you can always ask them to come by and do a book reading if you guys have a, you know, whether it's a Girl Scout troop, Boy Scout troop, a library, whatever it might be. So we are going to go ahead and we are going to answer your chat questions. So the first question is, I have spoiled my dog by adding canned food to his dry food. I want to quit this. Do I stop all at once because he will not eat if it is plain? I am using a natural dog food quality brand. My bad. So for the person who answered that or asked that, do not feel bad at all. And actually, I feed wet food with my dog's canned food or dry food as well. If you have a large dog, especially that is prone to bloat, the wet food is actually very helpful in the digestive process. What I would say is my recommendation, I'm just going to use my dog as an example. One of my dogs is 100 pounds. He gets 1 tablespoon of wet food per his 2 cups of dry food. So do not feel like it's a bad thing at all. I think where we have to worry more about wet food is when that is all that the dog is consuming, because the dry food does help with scraping teeth and all that good stuff. If you want to completely get your dog off of it, which is absolutely fine, because remember, everything that we talk about, it's your choice. We're just guiding you. You may have to do the tough love. It may just have to be, okay, I'm not going to put the wet food in there. Here's your dry food, buddy. If you don't want it, then, you know, we'll try it again next meal. Eventually your pup is going to go, you know what, I'm hungry. Apparently this wet stuff isn't coming back. I might as well go ahead and eat. So it is going to take some tough love on your part, but if you're just doing a little bit of wet food, do not feel bad at all. It is actually totally fine. So the next question, I've read a lot of different opinions about high protein foods. What is your opinion recommendation for pet dogs of normal activity levels eating a high protein food? So this is what I've learned over the years with all the pet parents that I've worked with, and this is why I really, really stressed making sure that you're looking at those protein levels. There are some really cool dog food bags out there right now that a lot of people are very drawn to because they're like, oh my God, this is like cool bag. It's got to be cool food. Make sure you're looking because there's a lot of brands that are definitely higher protein. And higher protein, we're talking typically you're going to get in the 28.9% to like 34%. If you have a normal dog, normal activity level, I personally am not a fan of high protein because it can cause your dog to be overweight. Now, if you're feeding high protein and you are not seeing your dog become overweight, then it's okay because there are certain animals, let's say a boxer, Great Dane, there are certain dogs that are harder to keep weight on. So if you have a dog like that, or if you have a dog that you use for hunting, those are the types of dogs that you really want to use the high protein foods for. So it just depends on what your activity level is, what your dog's is, what kind of breed, and are you trying to keep weight on them. So a lot of people may just adopt a dog from a shelter and they tend to be skinny. So at that point I would recommend, hey, let's get them on a higher protein food, get their weight up, and then we'll put them on a normal protein food. So I hope that answers that question. So if I want to make my own dog food, what should I put in it? And then we recently saw a sign at our camp that mentioned feeding time and bloat. Why do we have to let them know if our dogs just ate within an hour of camp? These are great questions. So the first question about wanting to make my own dog food, that's actually really something I would ask you to talk to your veterinarian about. I am not very knowledgeable about, the whole home-cooked meal options. There's a lot of different things out there now where you can cook your own chicken, and then they have pre-packaged foods. A lot of people do, the raw diets. It's just something that it's still kind of controversial. A lot of people do it. There are people that absolutely love it, but for that, I am definitely going to send you to your vet, because that's a question that they're going to be better to answer than I would be. Now, I'm glad you saw the sign at camp that mentioned feeding time and bloat. So why do we have to let them know if our dog just ate within an hour of camp? So for a lot of people that don't know what bloat is, there are many dogs that are susceptible to bloat, and what that basically means is that your dog can, it's typically long torso or long, like deep chest, short, I'm trying to talk. It's a smaller chest but deep chested. So not very far across, but tall and long. So Dobermans, Great Danes, number one, prone to bloat. Labs are very prone to bloat. So basically, with a dog that is prone to bloat, if they have just eaten, so 1 hour prior to camp, and then you add water, and then you were to, then you were to add exercise, these are all factors that can contribute to a dog having bloat. So the veterinarian recommended time for ensuring that the dog is able to really start digesting their food is a minimum of 1 hour of not running around and playing like we all know they love to do at camp. So we want to make sure that your dog is safe and healthy, because bloat can turn deadly in less than an hour. If it is not caught right away, it is something that is very scary. So we just do our best to make sure that we are preventing everything we can, as much as we can, because bloat is a very scary, it's actually the number 2 killer of dogs behind cancer, because it's very quick and very fast. So we try and minimize the issues by, if we know that the dog has eaten within an hour of being at camp, we just want them to rest. We want to make sure that food gets settled, because when they start running around the play yards, they get excited, they're adding exercise, they're going to gulp down a lot of water, and it's going to just go in there, and it's going to make that food expand, and that's where we have to worry about medical issues. So I hope that answers that question, and you can always speak with your local camp and ask them to explain it more if you have any more questions. And then there's 2 other questions I want to go through, and that's, we like to give our dog a lot of treats. Is that okay? So one of the things I would say with that is, yeah, it's absolutely fine to give your dog treats, and the amount is really going to depend on a couple things. So right now I have a dog that I'm working with, and he has a lot of difficult behaviors. So he is on a very big training program. So with that, we are giving him more treats because we're using that to modify his behavior. But at the same time, we're cutting back on his food. So I would really you're going to want to look at the quality of the treats. That's a whole different conversation, but look at the quality of the treats, how many calories, and try and stay in the recommended amount. And if you're going to go outside of the recommended amount because you know that your puppy gives you that special look that we all fall for, cut back on your food a little bit. Actually, 2 more questions. Is rawhide okay for dogs? So I will just say that with rawhide, you have to be very careful for a few reasons. The first reason is that if a dog is not monitored they can actually get it to the point where they moisten certain pieces of it and can actually pull the chunk off and swallow it. If that does happen, there is a possibility that it can clog your dog's intestines, and it can wind up being a pretty expensive surgery to get out. So if you have a teeny tiny little dog, it's going to be a way more dangerous item to chew on than, you know, a bigger dog, but it's still super duper important to pay attention to. The other thing is that rawhides tend to be very fatty, and with that brings a lot of doggy gas, which not a lot of people like to deal with. So if you notice you're feeding your dog rawhide and you're having that issue, you may try cutting the rawhide out for a little bit and seeing if that helps. And then you just got to watch to them breaking their teeth. So the harder the items they're chewing on, the more likely they are to crack their teeth. But with rawhide, I would say be very, very careful with it, because there are a lot of downsides to it. And then, famous question, what about giving table scraps? So table scraps are totally up to the parent. And what I would say, so my dogs absolutely get table scraps because they give me that aforementioned look that I talked about, but my dogs get their scraps out of their actual food bowls. So you never want to literally give table scraps, meaning don't give your dog food from the table or anywhere that you're eating, because that's going to cause begging from your dog. Try and keep things that are healthier. There are definitely some things to avoid, but it's absolutely okay to sneak your dog a little thing here or there, but only if you want to. So I just always say, because a lot of people say, well, you know, maybe my dog's not going to eat food if they're getting table scraps, and I always pretty much say they don't really know that they just think it's a really, really special treat. So if you want to feed table scraps, totally fine. I would recommend doing it from their food bowl. Okay, so that looks like all the questions we have. So I want to thank all of you guys for being on the call. If you have additional questions, because a lot of times we have people that get additional questions that they didn't think about at the time, you can go ahead and post them on our Facebook page, and we will respond as soon as possible. So if you haven't already, here's where you can like us on Facebook. Just share your thoughts about the webinar, and like I said, if you have any questions about anything further, you can go ahead and reach out to us there, and we will get back to you right away. Thanks, guys, for joining us, and have a great evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude your webinar for today. We thank you for your participation and ask that you please disconnect your lines.